Hi there, folks. My name is Sloth. I am an open world commander for Hardstuck and Overflow Trading Company. If you are on the NA servers, you've probably seen me in your mentions, being very annoying about Dragon's End and the weekend train that I run, the Sloth Train. I get a lot of questions pretty frequently about the best way to cash out on my trains, so I wanted to go over the methods that I would recommend using to do so. And this doesn't just apply to my train, you can use this for anything, any open world activity, or just general farming. So if you feel like you're stuck in terms of progressing through like unlocking things you want, like legendary weapons or Black Lion skins, and you'd like to get more out of your playtime, this is a good video to watch. Real quick, I'm just going to go over the key concepts that we'll be talking about today. First is that account-bound mats and currencies are only obtained through spending time playing the game, and therefore they represent time, right? Every time you get an account-bound mat, it's because you spent time. So we can leverage that time into something that we can sell. And you can either do this through the trading post, or you can make deals with other players, and we'll get into the specifics of that later in the video. So earlier I was mentioning that spirit shards are time, right? The only way to get them is by playing the game. That's the only way you can accumulate XP. There have been circumstances in the past where ArenaNet has accidentally made spirit shards purchasable with gold. They have removed all of those, and if any of them pop up again, they will definitely do so. So for the purposes of our argument, the only way to get spirit shards is by playing the game and accumulating XP. And because it's exclusively from your time, we can say that the spirit shard is a unit of time. One spirit shard is equal to however long it took you to get it. And this also applies to other account-bound mats and currencies like Imperial Favor. So it's not just spirit shards that we're talking about here, but it's a good starting point to illustrate this concept. So let's get into that. But before we do that, we need to talk about value-added processes, right? This is a real-life manufacturing term to define any task that a worker does in order to make something more valuable. In real life, I am a machinist, right? I run a CNC machine and I manufacture parts for customers. Sometimes they want it cut out in a funny shape. Sometimes they want holes in it. Sometimes they just want it. Sometimes they just want a rectangle that's like really precise. And my task at work is to do a value-added process on these pieces of material in order to make what they want, right? By making something in my machine with the raw material, I have done a process that adds value, right? And in doing so, that took my time, right? It took me time to do that process. It took the machine time to do that process. So in the context of Guild Wars 2, like I said earlier, the spirit shards and Imperial Favor and other account-bound mats you get are physical representations of time. So we can apply that time to raw materials in order to make stuff more valuable. Let's explore an example of that now. These are the T5 to T6 material conversions. These are Mystic Forge recipes that you can do. You take some T5, a little bit of T6, throw some spirit shards at it, through the Philosopher's Stone component in that recipe, and then you get more T6 materials than you put in. There are other things you can do. There is a website linked in the description for this. This is Lunchbox. It's got a nice layout table. We can see that a lot of these Mystic Forge recipes are actually like really bad, but in general, the T5 to T6 conversions are quite good, right? We can see that every time we do the T5 to T6 conversion for blood, we actually make 14 silver, right? If we're planning to sell this on the trading post. But if we're not and we're just needed for our own purposes, then we actually save 32 silver, which is not bad every time we click the Mystic Forge button. But we can only do that as long as we have the spirit shards to back it up, right? This is not an infinite process, and I'm not saying that this is a good idea to do, right? I would only personally recommend material conversion if you are flush with spirit shards. If you have so many spirit shards that none of the other methods I'm going to talk about are even viable because you just have so many of them, right? I'm using this as an example to show that the crystallization of your time, the spirit shard, can be used to make normal components that can be sold more valuable than they were before, right? That's the purpose of this example. So let's move on to something actually a little bit more reasonable that yields better profit, right? The End of Dragons weapon precursors. These are legendary weapon precursors that you can craft through End of Dragons. If you sell them on the trading post, the tradable mats plus the account bound mats, like by applying the account bound mats to the tradable mats will make the item more valuable. And we can check that real quick by taking a look at Guild Wars 2 efficiency, right? So we can see here that the cost of all of the components for the precursor is around 57, 58 gold. But the price that we're going to be selling it for is 125 gold on the trading post. So after taxes, we're going to be profiting around 65 gold. That's pretty good, right? And we can see that there's a big list of items that we need. These are the tradable components, right? We can buy these parts off the trading post, and then obviously these are just our coins. We're going to be using them for vendor transactions. But everything else, the Spirit Shard, the Imperial Favor, the Research Note is kind of an account-bound mat in that you can't directly get them, but you kind of can by salvaging things you bought off the trading post. So that's not really counted here. It's just kind of there because there's no actual gold value for the Research Note in-game, right? But so if we're primarily focusing on the 50 Spirit Shards for the Eldritch Scroll and the Imperial Favor for the 2 Blessings of the Jade Empress that we need. And that is where the value lies, right? Because if these account-bound mat components did not exist in the recipe, if you didn't have to do research notes, then the value of this item on the trading post would be only 58 gold or so, right? Maybe a little more, maybe a little less, depending on market conditions. But because this account-bound mat component is here, and these take time to get, that makes this item inherently valuable, right? The Gen 3 Precursor is a great starting point if you don't have a whole lot of resources to throw at things, because it, like we saw earlier, it only costs around 55 to 60 gold to get started, right? And we're going to be listing these on the trading post, and eventually someone will buy them, right? You should definitely do your research on price points. GW2BLTC.com is a great resource for that, but that is beyond the scope of this video. I will definitely make another one at some point to go over that, or there's other videos out there that will probably do that right now. Moving on to the full legendary weapon, right? The full legendary weapon is going to be a lot more components. Lots more stuff to throw at it in terms of the tradable aspect. We're talking about 1,250 gold of components at current market prices at time of recording, right? But because the investment is higher and it's a lot more of a pain in the ass to get all these account bound components together, we're going to get more out of our mats in this way, right? So for a Gen 3 weapon, we're looking at fractals and other PvE activities for the Glob of Dark Matter. We're looking at Imperial Favor. If you're doing a Gen 1, it's going to be Dungeons and Karma that are the unique components. And then for all weapons, we're going to need to do some kind of map completion. We're going to need to go get a Gift of Battle for World v. World. We're going to need a lot of Spirit Shards, and we're going to need to do some Mystic Clovers, right? And how much you need of those, which maps you need to complete, is going to depend on which weapon you are making. I would use the wiki for information and Guild Wars 2 efficiency to give you a nice crafting tree. So let's take a look at one now. This is Dragon's Bite, or sorry, not Dragon's Bite, Orien's Bite. This is the Gen 3 Greatsword, right? I just picked it at random. It doesn't need to be this one. We can see that the list of tradable components is quite large and quite expensive, right? Lots of trophies, a whole bunch of other stuff. Ooh, those ambergris are expensive. Those antique summoning stones are expensive. Mystic coins, jade runestones. So the tradable mat component is quite a bit bigger. Like I said earlier, it's around 1250 gold. And the list of account-bound mats is also larger. We're going to have to go out of our way to get a Gift of Battle if you're not super into World v. World. That might be a task, right? we're going to have to go get a Ball of Dark Energy. If you're not into activities that make a lot of Ascended weapons to the point where you start salvaging them, like Fractals or Raids, that might be a bit of a hurdle to get over. We're going to need to go do a map completion. We're going to need Spirit Shards, Research Notes, Imperial Favor, Karma for the Obsidian Shards that we need to buy, right there. Quite a bit more, but the cash out is a lot larger, right? And we can also do this with Gen 1 weapons. This is Twilight. The material list is slightly different, and the tasks we'll need to go do are also different. Instead of fractals or raids, we're going to need to do dungeons. We're going to need more spirit shards. We're going to need to do a Corteria map completion instead of a Cantha map completion. But the material list is also different. You should pick the one that works best for you. If you cannot stand Corteria map completion, like that's me, I hate it so much, do not do Gen 1s, right? If you don't own End of Dragons, then you can easily do the Gen 1 map completion with no issues. Now, once your weapon sells, the first thing you should do with that giant chunk of gold you just got is buy all of the materials you need to make your next weapon, right? If you do this, you can keep this cycle moving forever, because you won't have to farm out the materials to get the next weapon again, which is really nice. And whatever is left over, that is your profit, right? So profit, we can define this. Profit is the amount of gold, or the value of the stuff you're putting into it. Sorry, let me rephrase that. That was terrible. Holy cow. The profit is the amount of gold you got minus the amount of gold you put into it, right? That's how you can calculate that very easily. Now, if we do not have our own materials to use for that legendary weapon, there is an alternative deal we can do that is off market, usually on the Overflow Trading Company. If you need a link to that Discord server, you can check this. You can check the description, along with a link to every single web page that I've shown in this video. A GOM deal, and GOM stands for Gift of Mastery, right? In this context, we're using that term to represent the all-encompassing list of account-bound materials for a given legendary weapon. So we're going to have two players in this, right? We have you, the seller, right, who has all of the account-bound parts of your legendary weapon. And then we have the buyer, right, who has all the tradable parts. And you, as the seller, are going to use the other player's tradable mats to make a legendary weapon for them. So you are using your time to make a legendary for somebody else who is providing you with all of the raw materials to make that weapon. And then you'll send it back to them. Once you do that, you get paid immediately, so you don't even have to mess around with the trading post. This is a very attractive option for people who are looking for a better cash out, but are unable to get their own materials, right? Now, there are some downsides to this method. One downside is the buyer needs to have a reason to cash you out for your Gift of Mastery, right? Your GOM. So the way that they'll usually go about that financially is they will pay you less than the value that you would get if you just sold your own weapon, right? Usually they're looking for a profit margin of around 100 gold, so just take whatever. Yeah, they're looking for a profit margin of around 100 gold on their weapon, right? So you'll lose out on about 100 gold doing this. Also, because you're using somebody else's mats, any mats you happen to have laying around, in order to offset the cost of your crafting, you don't get to use these, right? You don't get to use them because you're using somebody else's. So that's a concept that's a factor to keep in mind. If you are flush with mats, this is not something I would personally recommend. And last and most importantly, you have to talk to people to set these kinds of deals up. So if you are bad at talking to people, this might not be the option for you. And we can take a look at the overflow right now and see how much money these deals are going for, right? I'm looking in the trade review channel here on the Overflow Trading Company, and we can take a look and see all of the deals that have gone down for Gift of Jade Mastery, right? So these are people doing just Gift of Jade Mastery deals, not the Gen 1s, the Gen 3s. We can see that Red Raven did a deal with this guy over here, and he paid them 850 gold. I actually think he's doing one right. Yes, he is doing it. He is doing a weapon deal right now as I'm recording this video, which is incredibly hilarious timing. And yeah, he seems to be buying a lot these days. This guy secured a deal for 800 gold, and that's the price he paid. So you can shop around a little bit, see who's buying, see who's selling. Well, yeah, see who's buying in your case, because you're going to be the seller in this deal, right? And you can find the best price. You can negotiate with these people, right? If you don't like the price they're giving, you can say, "Can you do this number?" And they might say yes or no, right? So this this option does require talking to people and getting social. There's a link to the overflow in the not the squad description. I'm too used to talking about in game. There's a link to the overflow in the video description, so you can take a look at that if you are interested in a deal like this. If you have any questions about this video, the overflow is a good place to ask about these kinds of things. Everything I've talked about are concepts taught in the server. You could also alternatively leave a comment in this video. I will answer. There's my email if you would like to just send me messages privately. That's okay too. I'm on Mastodon. If you're on Federated social media, you can ping me there. I'm also in most of the larger Discord servers. You can ping me in Overflow whenever. I will answer these questions if somebody else doesn't get to them first. Hopefully this video was helpful for you. Again, if you have questions, please ask. That was a big, massive info dump. So take a moment, process it, and hopefully this video will help you generate money from the stuff you already have, but not the material storage side of things, the account bound side of things. Hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you around. Take care.